Some places aren't haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by silence, the kind of silence that follows rules and punishes those who break them. I moved to a farm just outside Tallahassee, looking for peace and a fresh start. What I found was a barn that made my dogs scream, neighbors who smiled just a little too wide, and a chicken coop full of eggs that didn't follow the rules of nature. There were 3 rules left behind by the last owner. Crows circle the barn, stay inside until sundown. Dog won't go in the barn. Neither do you. Count 12 eggs when there's less. Don't touch the last one. At first, I laughed. Then I started following them. This isn't a ghost story. It's a containment protocol. Watch until the end, because what's inside the barn is terrifying. But the real horror may be living just beyond the fence. Leave a comment if your hometown ever had a house no one talked about. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the rules. You're watching Night Creepypasta Rules. And this is, I moved to a farm in a strange suburb outside of Tallahassee. The Florida air didn't just hang heavy at Black Creek Farmstead. It clung, thick and wet, tasting of sunshine, damp earth, blossoming honeysuckle, and the underlying funk of slow decay. Stepping out of the U-Haul and into the oppressive afternoon heat felt like wading into warm soup. Sweat prickled instantly on my skin. I'd traded the relentless gray noise of the city for this. A wall of buzzing insect sounds so constant it paradoxically emphasized the profound quiet beneath. This was supposed to be peace, my escape from burnout, from the life that had chewed me up and spat me out. Right now, it just felt heavy. The farmstead itself was a study in neglected potential, a charming, if desperately paint-needing, 2-story farmhouse sat shaded by massive oaks dripping with Spanish moss. Overgrown fields, thick with weeds and wildflowers, stretched back towards a dark tree line. And then there was the barn. It dominated the property, larger than the house, its faded red paint peeling, roof sagging slightly, the dark maw of its main door looming like a judgment. Beside it, a small, functional-looking chicken coop seemed almost comically mundane in comparison. My loyal rescue mutt, Buster, whined softly from the passenger seat of my dusty car, parked behind the U-Haul, his usual boundless enthusiasm noticeably absent. Just beyond the property line, marked by a row of listing fence posts swallowed by vines, began the uncanny neatness of the Oak Haven Estate subdivision. Manicured lawns, identical beige houses, sprinklers whispering rhythmically in the heat. It felt jarringly close, yet a world away from the tangled wildness of the farmstead. A different kind of silence emanated from there, watchful, curated. Inside the farmhouse, amidst the previous owner's dusty cast-offs and the scent of mildew and lemon oil, I found it. Tucked inside the back of a kitchen drawer, beneath yellowed appliance manuals, was a folded, brittle piece of notebook paper, handwritten and shaky. Faded ink were 3 short lines. Crows circle the barn. Stay indoors till sundown. Dog won't go in the barn. You don't either. Count 12 eggs when you know there's less. Don't touch the last. No signature. No explanation. Just the rules. Local folklore. The ramblings of an aging owner. I almost laughed, crumpling it slightly. But something in the deliberate, spidery handwriting made me pause. I smoothed it out and tucked it into my back pocket, an unsettling curiosity mingling with my exhaustion. Later, while hauling boxes, a voice startled me. "Well, hello there, welcome to the neighborhood." Leaning over the dilapidated fence separating the farm from Oak Haven Estates was a woman, likely mid-60s, immaculately dressed in crisp linen, her bright white sneakers pristine despite the dusty ground on her side. Oh, her smile was wide, blindingly white. "Mrs. Gable, according to the mailbox next door." "Just moving in," I managed, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Oh, how wonderful. It's brave of you, taking on this old place," she said, her gaze sweeping over the farmhouse, lingering perhaps a fraction too long on the barn. "Lots of work. Needs a firm hand. Let me know if you need anything at all, dear." anything. Her friendliness felt slightly too intense, her eyes sharp and observant behind the smile. As the afternoon wore on, Buster finally consented to explore the yard, though he gave the barn a wide berth, sniffing cautiously at the overgrown grass. Driven by a need to assess the property's main structure, I headed towards it, Buster trotting nervously a few paces behind. The closer we got, the heavier the air seemed to feel around the massive wooden building. A low hum, maybe just insects, seemed to emanate from within its shadow depths. 10 yards from the big sliding doors, Buster stopped dead. His ears flattened, the fur along his spine bristled, and a low, distressed whine started deep in his chest. He planted his paws, refusing to budge, staring at the barn doors with an intensity that made my own skin crawl. "Come on, boy," I urged, tugging gently on his collar. "It's just an old barn." He pulled back harder, whining louder now, his body trembling slightly. He wouldn't go closer. Rule 2 flashed in my mind, unbidden. Dog won't go in the barn, you don't either. Looking from Buster's genuine terror to the dark, silent maw of the barn, a chill traced its way down my spine, despite the suffocating Florida heat. Maybe the old owner wasn't just eccentric after all. Maybe the rules weren't just folklore. Standing there, with my dog trembling beside me, and the shadow of the barn looming, my quiet, simple life already felt terrifyingly complicated. Settling into Black Creek farmstead felt like trying to smooth a wrinkled sheet that refused to lie flat. I unpacked boxes under the drone of the window AC unit, trying to ignore the imposing presence of the barn, hulking just beyond the overgrown yard. Buster, my usually intrepid mutt, stuck close to my heels inside the house, casting wary glances towards the windows facing the barn, a low whine occasionally vibrating in his chest. His unease was infectious. The need for tools eventually drove me towards the barn again a few days later. The previous owner had left behind decades of accumulated junk, according to the sale documents, but also potentially useful things. A functioning tractor mower, garden implements, maybe even spare parts for the farmhouse's ancient plumbing. With Buster trotting reluctantly behind me, leash clipped on just in case, I approached the big, weathered sliding doors. The oppressive silence around the structure seemed to deepen as we got closer, the usual chorus of Florida insects fading unnervingly. Buster started whining again, that same low, distressed sound from our first day, planting his paws firmly about 20 feet from the doors. He refused to budge, his body trembling, eyes fixed on the dark space beneath the doors. "Come on, boy," I coaxed, pulling gently. "There's probably just squirrels in there." He dug his paws in harder, emitting a short, sharp bark of protest, looking up at me with genuine fear in his eyes. This wasn't his usual stubbornness. This was terror. Rule 2. Dog won't go in the barn. You don't either. Frustration warred with a growing knot of apprehension. I needed those tools, but Buster. I trusted his instincts. I let the leash go slack. Okay. I sighed. "We won't go in." His trembling eased slightly, though he still refused to move closer. I tried walking towards the door alone, just to peer through the cracks. Buster let out a series of sharp, panicked barks, pulling frantically back towards the house. Fine. The tools could wait. Whatever was or wasn't in there wasn't worth terrorizing my dog. As we retreated towards the farmhouse, Mrs. Gable's overly bright voice called out from her side of the fence. She was tending her immaculate rose bushes, snippers in hand. "Having trouble with the old barn, dear?" she asked, her smile wide and fixed. "Just need some work," I called back evasively. "Dog doesn't seem to like it much." "Oh, they sense things, don't they?" she chirped. "Probably just rats, or maybe snakes seeking shade. Best keep that old thing shut up tight regardless." Wouldn't want anything unpleasant wandering out. She went back to her roses, but I felt her eyes watching me until I was back inside the house. Later that afternoon, working near a back window, I glanced out towards the barn. A faint scraping sound, like heavy wood dragging slowly across concrete, drifted from inside the structure, barely audible over the cicada's drone. Then, silence again. That night, before locking up, I made a point of checking the barn door's heavy wooden latch. It was secure, firmly in place. Yet, when I looked out the kitchen window before heading to bed, moonlight illuminated the barnyard. The massive sliding door was open, just a crack, maybe 6 inches, revealing a sliver of absolute impenetrable darkness within. The discovery of the opened barn door left me deeply unsettled. I forced it shut the next morning, the wood groaning in protest, and wedged a heavy piece of timber against it from the outside, though I doubted it would do much good if something truly wanted out or in. I started researching Black Creek farmstead online, digging through county records, old newspaper archives. Bits and pieces surfaced. Crops failing inexplicably decades ago, whispers of livestock sickness, previous owners leaving abruptly or meeting unfortunate accidents. Nothing concrete, just the lingering stain of bad luck and local avoidance. I drove into the small town nearby for supplies and stopped at Abernathy's Feed and Seed, hoping the elderly proprietor might offer some local insight. Mr. Abernathy, a man whose face seemed mapped with the history of the county, listened patiently, polishing a pair of spectacles. Black Creek, he'd mused, his voice dry like autumn leaves. Aye, that place has history? Sits on tricky land? Some say the soil remembers things best forgotten. He offered vague tales of Seminole conflicts centuries ago, of early settlers struggling. But when I pressed about recent owners or specific rumors, he became evasive. Folks around here tend to let old ground lie still, was all he'd offer, his eyes cautioning me against digging further. The crows appeared 3 days later. It was mid-afternoon, hot and still, the air thick enough to taste. I was trying to clear weeds from a potential garden patch near the house, Buster lying panting in the shade. A single crow landed silently on the peak of the barn roof, then another, and another. Within minutes there were dozens, a silent black congregation gathering against the washed-out blue sky. Then, slowly, deliberately, they began to circle, not randomly, but in a tight, coordinated vortex, directly above the barn. Their wings making no sound, casting slow, dizzying shadows on the ground below. Rule 1. Crows, circle the barn. Stay inside until sunset. The sight was profoundly unnatural, deeply unsettling. A cold dread, unrelated to the heat, spread through me. My half-formed plan to investigate the barn again, maybe try to peek through a higher window, evaporated. This was an omen, clear and undeniable. Buster, inside, I called, my voice tight. He was already on his feet, hackles raised, emitting a low growl at the silent, circling birds. We retreated quickly to the farmhouse, the heavy thud of the back door locking sounding final. From the living room window, I watched them. The silent, relentless circling continued for hours. No cawing, no squabbling, just a hypnotic, coordinated flight against the backdrop of the decaying barn. It felt like a ritual, a vigil. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, the light hitting the circling crows seemed to warp, making their forms shimmer, momentarily indistinct. Then, precisely as the last sliver of the sun vanished below the tree line, the circling stopped. As one, the crows broke formation and flew away, dispersing rapidly into the deepening twilight, leaving the sky empty and the silence profound. Later that evening, summoning my courage, I stepped cautiously out the back door onto the porch. The air felt clear, normal again. But resting directly on the worn doormat, placed dead center, was a single, large, glossy black feather. It hadn't been there before, and none of the crows had ever landed near the house. The feather felt like a calling card left by something ancient and patient. I didn't touch it, nudging it off the porch with my shoe, trying to dismiss it as coincidence, a stray plume carried by the wind. But the feeling of being watched, of operating under unseen rules on borrowed time, intensified. Sleep offered little respite, filled with circling shadows and the image of Buster's terrified eyes staring at the barn. Mrs. Gable's overly bright good mornings, called over the fence, felt increasingly like surveillance reports. The farm routine became my anchor to sanity. Clearing brush, patching fences, tending the small flock of hens left by the previous owner. Collecting the eggs was usually a moment of simple satisfaction, a tangible reward for the day's effort. There were 11 hens. Usually I collected 9 or 10 eggs, sometimes 11 on a good day. One sweltering afternoon, I headed to the coop, basket in hand. The hens clucked and scratched contentedly in their run. Inside the small wooden structure, I began checking the nesting boxes filled with clean straw. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11 brown eggs, warm from the hens. Normal. I reached into the last occupied box and paused. There were 2 eggs nestled side by side in that last box, bringing the total count to 13, not 12, as the strangely specific third rule had warned against touching, but 13. Yet, the rule was about extra eggs, counting more than expected. 11 hens shouldn't reliably lay 13 eggs. My hand hovered over the last 2. One looked perfectly ordinary. The other, the 13th egg I'd counted, felt subtly wrong. It was a fraction paler than the others, its shell unnaturally smooth, almost like polished stone. And when my fingers accidentally brushed against it, it felt strangely cold, heavy, inert. Rule 3. If you count 12 or more eggs when there should be fewer, don't touch the last one you counted. Did last mean the final number? 13. Or the 12th one specifically? The wording was ambiguous, but the implication felt clear. One of these extra eggs was dangerous. The 13th one felt colder, deader. The 12th one just felt extra. My heart pounded. Logic dictated I take both. Maybe a hen was surprisingly productive, but the memory of the crows, Buster's terror, the silent warnings, they screamed caution. I carefully collected the first 11 eggs, then the 12th, placing it gently in the basket. The 13th, the cold, pale, smooth one, I left sitting alone in the nesting box, a tiny ominous porcelain orb in the dim light of the coop. It felt like defusing a bomb. Step by careful step, back in the farmhouse kitchen washing the eggs. I kept glancing out the window towards the coop, an irrational dread settling over me. Did I choose right? Was the 12th the danger, or the 13th, or both? Later that afternoon, drawn by an anxiety I couldn't shake, I looked out again. From this distance, I couldn't see the egg itself, but spreading slowly on the clean straw beneath where I'd left the 13th egg was a faint, dark, viscous-looking stain, like crude oil or spoiled yolk, slowly seeping outwards from beneath the untouched, perfect shell. The dark stain spreading beneath the 13th egg felt like a promise, a slow corruption seeping into the mundane fabric of the farm. My days took on a heightened sense of nervous vigilance. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every shadow cast by the swaying Spanish moss, felt like a potential prelude. Buster mirrored my anxiety, sticking close, his hackles often raised for no discernible reason, especially near the silent, imposing barn. Then the summer storm hit, rolling in off the Gulf with subtropical fury one late afternoon. The sky turned a bruised purple-gray, unleashing a deluge that hammered against the roof with a deafening intensity. Wind howled through the oaks, rattling the window panes. Within minutes, the power flickered and died, plunging the farmhouse into a humid, shadowed gloom, lit only by the emergency flashlights I'd thankfully unpacked. Outside, the world dissolved into a gray, wind-lashed torrent. And through the roar of the rain and wind, I saw them. Crows, dozens, maybe hundreds, appearing as if conjured from the storm itself, battling the gale-force winds to circle, relentlessly, silently, directly above the unseen barn. Rule 1. Manifesting amidst the chaos. Staying inside wasn't a choice. It was the only option. Buster, who usually weathered storms with stoic indifference, was frantic. He paced whining between the front door and the back door, refusing to settle, occasionally letting out a low, guttural growl directed not outside, but towards the interior walls facing the barn. Then, he refused to even go near the back door, the one where the feather had appeared, planting himself firmly in the center of the living room, trembling. Rule 2. Amplified. Something was wrong, not just in the barn, but potentially near it, its influence radiating outwards, trapped, listening to the storm rage and Buster's low growls. A desperate need for some control, some routine, sent me towards the chicken coop earlier than usual, flashlight beam cutting through the dim house. Maybe fresh eggs would feel normal. Inside the small, stuffy coop, the hens huddled miserably. I counted the nesting boxes quickly by flashlight beam. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. Again. The 12th egg looked normal. The 13th, pale and unnaturally smooth, felt deathly cold to the touch even through the oppressive humidity. The dark stain beneath it on the straw was larger now, glistening wetly in the flashlight beam. Rule 3 escalated as I backed out of the coop, leaving the 12th and 13th eggs untouched. A deafening clap of thunder shook the very foundation of the farmhouse. It was immediately followed by a sound from the barn. Not thunder, but a heavy splintering crack, like massive timbers giving way under immense pressure. Then, a prolonged, deep scraping sound, like something immensely heavy being dragged across the barn's wooden floor. Buster erupted into furious, terrified barking inside the house, heart pounding, soaked from the dash back from the coop. I slammed and bolted the back door just as lightning illuminated the yard in a stark, blue-white flash. In that instant, I saw it, a tall, gaunt shadow detaching itself from the deeper darkness within the slightly ajar barn door. Impossibly tall, seeming to unfold itself into the storm before vanishing as darkness crashed back down. San, dear, are you all right in there? The voice, thin but piercing, cut through the wind and rain from the direction of the fence line. Mrs. Gable, standing on her side, under a large umbrella, somehow still looking crisp and unruffled despite the deluge. "We're fine," I yelled back over the storm, suspicion instantly overriding relief. "Just the storm." "Oh, it's a terrible one," she called, taking a step closer to the fence. "Sometimes these old farms, things get stirred up, especially that barn." "Did you happen to notice if the crows were about before it hit?" They always seem to know. Her words, specific, referencing the rule, sent a chill down my spine. "How would you know about the crows?" I shouted back, stepping onto the covered back porch, Buster growling beside me. Mrs. Gable's bright smile faltered for just a second, replaced by something calculating, almost impatient. "Local knowledge, dear," she said, her voice hardening slightly. "Things pass down. We all know Black Creek Farm needs careful handling, especially during storms. Did you check the eggs today? Sometimes stress makes hens lay funny. Best to just leave any odd ones be. Wouldn't want to risk." "You know the rules," I stated flatly, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The crows, the barn, the eggs, you know. Her smile vanished completely. We know what's necessary to keep things stable, she said, her voice sharp, cutting. This farm, it holds things back. Things that were disturbed when Oak Haven Estates went up. As long as the farm stands, as long as someone is here to observe the local customs, things stay balanced, contained. On this side of the fence, her gaze was hard now, all pretense gone. You're the caretaker now, Sam. Whether you like it or not, don't let things get out of hand. It wouldn't be pleasant for anyone. The implication was clear. My safety, the farm's existence, perhaps even my presence here was a necessary component of their peace, their safety. I was the buffer. I was the containment. Another tremendous crash echoed from the barn, followed by a sound like splintering wood on the inside of the structure, closer to the main doors this time. Buster barked frantically. Mrs. Gable took an involuntary step back from the fence, her eyes wide with genuine fear now. "Keep it contained, Sam," she hissed, before turning and hurrying back towards her pristine house, abandoning me to the storm and whatever horrors her neighborhood had conveniently quarantined on my side of the property line. The scraping sound started again from the barn. Louder now, accompanied by a low guttural vibration that felt like it resonated up from the damp earth itself. Something was trying to get out, and I was trapped here, alone, with only a terrified dog and 3 insane rules standing between me and the storm within the storm. Dawn broke bruised and swollen, the storm having grumbled its way eastward, leaving behind a world washed clean but violated. The power remained stubbornly off. The silence in the farmhouse thick and heavy, broken only by the drip of water from the eaves and busters, occasional low whine from beside my feet. We had survived the night, huddled in the living room, listening to the intermittent scraping and shuddering sounds from the direction of the barn diminish as the storm waned. Sleep had been impossible as the first weak sunlight filtered through the grime-streaked windows. I cautiously ventured outside, Buster sticking so close he tripped me twice. The yard was a mess of fallen branches and debris. The black feather that had been on the back porch was gone, washed or blown away. I checked the chicken coop first. The hens were ruffled but unharmed. In the nesting boxes, there were only the normal brown eggs I hadn't collected the day before. The 12th and 13th eggs, the pale, cold one and its companion, were gone. No broken shells, no sign of disturbance, other than the dark, slightly sticky stain on the straw where the 13th had rested, now fading slightly as it dried. Vanished. My gaze went to the barn. From a distance it looked unchanged, brooding silently under the clearing sky. But as I approached, Buster planting his feet firmly 50 yards back near the house, refusing to come further, I saw the damage. The heavy wooden crossbeam I'd wedged against the main sliding doors was snapped cleanly in two, the pieces lying waterlogged in the mud, and the doors themselves, though closed now, bore deep, splintering gouges on the inside surface, visible through the slight gap where they met, as if something immensely strong had clawed or battered against them from within, trying to force its way out. A deep, resonant groan echoed from within the structure as I watched, the sound of old timbers settling, or perhaps something else stirring now that the storm had passed. I backed away slowly, the hair on my arms prickling. Route 2 wasn't just a suggestion. It was a boundary around something that desperately wanted out. Later that morning, needing answers I knew I wouldn't get, I walked to the fence line. Mrs. Gable was already out, calmly surveying her own pristine, untouched lawn, picking up a few stray twigs the storm had deposited there. She looked up as I approached, her expression instantly rearranging itself into one of bright, neighborly concern. "Goodness, Sam, what a night," she exclaimed, her voice perfectly modulated. "Everything all right over here?" Sounded like a war zone. sounded like a war zone. It was rough, I said, keeping my voice level, watching her eyes. Lost power. Heard some strange noises from the barn. Oh, that old barn. She laughed, a light, dismissive sound. Probably just the wind rattling the loose boards, dear. Or maybe a branch came down on the roof. These storms do kick up a fuss. She didn't ask about the crows, the eggs, the specific sounds. You seem to know a lot about the local customs last night, Mrs. Gable. I pressed, unable to stop myself. About the rules. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Just old wives' tales, Sam, she said smoothly, turning back to her perfect garden. Things people say to spook newcomers. Pay them no mind. Focus on fixing up the place. I'm sure it will be lovely once you get it under control. She didn't look at me again, effectively ending the conversation, leaving me standing there facing the impenetrable wall of her denial, the silent complicity of the entire neighborhood hanging heavy in the humid air. There would be no help here, no answers. Only the rules, the barn, the eggs, and the silent watchers next door. Staying meant accepting the role they'd assigned me, the buffer, the keeper of their quarantine blight. The decision, once made, felt less like a choice and more like an inevitable escape. Black Creek Farmstead wasn't a refuge. It was a beautifully disguised cage, watched over by keepers who prioritized their own peace above all else. I couldn't live like that, constantly looking over my shoulder, deciphering omens, wondering which broken rule would be my last, all while my neighbors tended their roses and pretended not to notice the darkness they kept carefully contained on my side of the fence. Selling the place quickly and quietly was surprisingly easy. Mr. Abernathy, when I mentioned needing to leave due to unexpected family matters, knew a local investor very interested in properties bordering Oak Haven Estates. The offer was low, barely covering my costs, but I took it without haggling. The paperwork was handled remotely. I never met the investor. I suspected I already knew who was behind it, ensuring the farm remained occupied, the buffer zone maintained. Packing was a blur. I took only what fit in my car, leaving behind the ghosts and the potential buried in the overgrown fields. Bustazine almost joyful as we drove away, leaving the oppressive weight of the farmstead shrinking in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. Months later, I found myself in a small apartment in a coastal city hundreds of miles north. The smell of salt spray, a welcome replacement for damp earth and decay. I found a quiet job in a bookstore. I adopted another dog, hoping to give Buster a companion and myself a further anchor to normalcy. I tried, piece by painful piece, to rebuild the simple life I'd sought in Florida. The memories remained, sharp, unwelcome intrusions, but distance brought a fragile sense of safety. Crows were just birds here. Eggs were just breakfast. Barns were just buildings, mostly. Then the package arrived. A small, unassuming cardboard box left outside my apartment door by a courier. No return address, just my name and new address printed neatly on the label. My stomach twisted with a sudden, cold premonition. Buster, sensing my unease, let out a low whine from the living room. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, nestled in plain brown packing paper, were two items. The first was a recent clipping from the Tallahassee Democrat newspaper, folded neatly. The headline read, "Historic Black Creek Farmstead welcomes new caretakers." The short article vaguely mentioned a young couple eager to restore the property, preserving its local heritage. New caretakers. The cycle continued. Beneath the clipping was the second item. Resting on the paper, looking pristine, almost luminous, was a single, perfect egg. It was unnaturally smooth, chalky white, cool to the touch despite the ambient room temperature. It looked exactly like the 12th, or 13th, egg I had fearfully left untouched in the coop at Black Creek Farmstead. There was no note. None was needed. The message was chillingly clear, delivered across hundreds of miles with cold, calculated precision. We know where you are. We haven't forgotten. The rules still apply even here. Stay quiet. I stood there in my anonymous apartment, The sounds of the distant city traffic suddenly muted, the fragile sense of safety shattering around me. In my hand, the egg felt impossibly heavy, a tangible piece of the darkness I thought I'd escaped, a reminder that the real fences weren't made of wood or wire, but of fear and complicity, and some boundaries, once crossed, could never truly be left behind. The silence from Hemlock County, it seemed, had a very long reach. I thought leaving the farm would be the end of it. I moved hundreds of miles away. New town, new life. I stopped looking out the window at night. I stopped counting eggs. I stopped checking for rules. Then the package came. No return address. Just my name, written in tight, careful letters. Inside, there were two things. A newspaper clipping announcing the proud new owners of Black Creek Farmstead. And sitting underneath it, cushioned in brown paper, was a single, smooth, bone-white egg. It was cold, heavier than it should have been, and I knew exactly what it meant. I never touched the last egg, but maybe I was never supposed to leave it behind either. They know where I am, and the rules, they still apply. Would you have followed them, or would you have opened the barn? Tell me in the comments. And if this story made your skin crawl, like and subscribe for more. We follow the strange rules, so you don't have to. This is Night Creepypasta Rules. Sleep well, and whatever you do, don't break the rules.